Ready to roll, Bill.
I'm ready to roll. Let's do
Excellent.
it.
Let's do it. So this is number 10 podcast on our theme with the bias of dreams as our backdrop was going to be conflict,
Is that a
battles, war.
bias?
Yes. And are they, um, how significant is the battle within and how is that reflected in dreams? And is that how do we talk about that? And we'll go through some dreams and some quotes and some of my dreams, some of other people's dreams, some of Bill's dreams maybe. And it started with a bit of a question for me is I've had so much conflict, war, battle in my personal dreams. And is that a universal experience? You don't want to assume that everybody's experience is the same as yours. And yeah. Um, yeah. And I wanted to go a little bit off of our last podcast and a bit of feedback that we had to say, it's nice to get a bit of input from where we go with dreams. And is there some reflections from the person's dream we worked with to try to keep boundaries and confidentiality in check and make sure we're being respectful of the dreamer or the person who's given us permission to work with their dreams. So I have just a little bit of feedback from our last podcast for anybody who listened. So thoughts, Bill, right off the top?
I mean, right off the top, it's been interesting because you and I talked about this a few days ago. So I did some research through my own sort of dream file of all the clients that I've worked with over the years, just like putting, and one of the things that I found is that which I kind of suspected actually was more like apocalyptic scenes, which often include like the feeling that there was a war. But one of the interesting things I found was I did find battle, and I actually have a couple of my own that are like kind of I'm in the middle of a current battle or current scene where there's conflict going on of some kind. One's a bomb diffusing dream. But I also found like there's a lot that are like you'll see the setting that's like that the dreamer will describe as apocalyptic. They're like walking through this setting where it's like the aftermath of a war. And I found that to be interesting and kind of speaking of sort of, what was the phrase you used? Preconceived ideas or about dreams. Like my own sort of like experience does have something to do with just like how abusive, violent the culture is, and and how people experience that as children. So I do think it's almost universal that there's some kind of conflict because I think most of us have experienced quite a bit of conflict, if nothing else, between sort of who we are and the way that that's, kind of pushed back down against in some way. And so I think for almost everybody I've ever worked with, I've experienced some kind of like struggle/battle in that way of like there's something that wants to come into being. And I wish it was like an egg in a nest that you could just like sit on and keep it warm and it would just open up. But in my experience, it doesn't tend to work that way. It tends to work more like you have to kind of fight your way through in some way belief systems and experiences that you've had that kind of keep you from letting that birth happen. Does that make sense?
Did you just say letting that birth happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Expand on that.
Well, I think that, I think there's something, I guess, again, this is like from my experience, like there's something that wants to come into consciousness. So there is something in each of us that wants to be born or born again, like whatever language you want to use around it. Like, I think part of the reason that dreams are sort of so cool and fascinating is because one part of what they do is they show us like this other part of us that like wants to come into being in this world in some way. And I think of that as a birthing process. But I guess like with that, any birthing process, there's also like a labor process. Like it doesn't just like pop out of the eggshell or pop out of the womb. There's a labor. And I think even more so, there's a bit of a battle or a struggle because I think we all carry beliefs and experiences that kind of repress that part of who we are. And so it's a
Yes.
battle to like make space for this, some other part. You talk about the inner world. Like I feel like we each have this like inner world character that we're like in this kind of process in some way. And part of that process is a struggle to bring into this world
Yes.
or birth into this world.
Yes. Which is like a whole different topic, which shows up in dreams oftentimes as birth and babies, and the number of times a part of us dies and a part of us is born shows up symbolically in dreams. Incredibly common for those who are on a path of change, for sure. I'm with you. Yeah. Otherwise, that makes sense. And as you're speaking, I realized there's far more Armageddon and carnage post-war dreams than actual war dreams. It's like, what is the carnage after the war? And I'm coming in with a bit of a blind spot here because I realize I've had so many battle dreams. It's easy to, when you live this way, it's easy to fall into the trap that everyone's experience is like yours. So, oh, and no matter what domain in life. So I just before this podcast, my kids happen to be home, 20-year-olds, Joseph and Sophia. I asked them, so do you think there's a battle within? Do you think there's conflict within you? And Sophia says, is this a trick question? It's like, of course, of course. And like Joseph says, well, no, not necessarily. It's like, don't you ever stay up at night and like mull over things? Isn't that like a battle? He says, no, I stay up at night, but I think about things. And this isn't about past lives, he says.
Good boundary setting.
Yes.
Good sword usage.
Don't think this is past lives. So, but hey, I mean, there's a part of me that does wonder, and of course, ancestrally or genetically or past lives or collective unconscious, because sometimes the images are uh, so profound in dreams and so vivid and so real that they seem far beyond anything one's experienced in this life. I also asked my friend Laura, who's been through a lot of healing and has given me permission to use her quotes in dreams. I said, do you think conflict and battle in dreams is, dreams as a reflection of somebody's actual inner journey and inner battle? And like in the Christian tradition, or the like good versus evil, well, there's the battle right there. Is that a battle? And it's not that simple, because some people would say, well, it's not the battle. You just choose Christ, or you just like, there's this, it's hard. People don't tend to necessarily agree on, each person I talk to says something different. And I like one of Laura's quotes is, once you realize you're in a battle, it's almost impossible to relate to people who are saying they are not. And I can kind of relate to that, but it has my bias. I've found a lot of life a battle, a lot of my inner world a battle, and hence a lot of my ability to function in the outer world as a battle. And she also says, I think that talking about what battle is like is the greatest weapon. And she also says, I think it takes a lot of insight to realize they're even in a battle. There's a quote I want to throw in just all over the map here from one of the Vanderkolk quotes. We were talking about does the body keep the score? And you gave me that article that maybe the body doesn't keep the score. But one of his quotes is, traumatized people are afraid of conflict. They fear losing control and ending up on the losing side once again. And how true that is. And that sort of person, and we tend to work with more traumatized people when we have clients as working with their dreams, and that ending up on the losing side is likely more common in the people that I've seen, well, both in the emergency room, in my other job, and in my job working with dreams. Thoughts, Bill?
So many thoughts.
Yes.
Don't even know where to begin. I mean, I bristle a little bit at that quote for some reason. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I don't think it's wrong. I just think this is like an issue that I always have with trauma scientists, like there's just some way they say it in this way that feels off to me. And even though I don't really disagree with what he's saying, there's like this implication of like, I'm scared that I'm going to be on the losing side again, as if like, in a way, to me, in a way, it's the wrong language. It's like, I'm actually back in that experience where I'm re-experiencing being her. It's not like I'm afraid of being her. It's like, I'm actually in that experience. I mean, I know it plays out that way in the world of like, it also projects out into the future. But I think, again, one of the ways that's amazing about, and even this conversation today, is like when you look at how many people have nightmares, or you look at how many people have apocalypse dreams or war dreams or battle dreams, you just realize like there's a reality that people live in that quote kind of like dismisses in a way. It's like, I know it's not in the quote, but there's this feeling of like, oh, they're just scared they're going to be there's this energy of just in there, even though they don't use the word just. They're just scared it's going to happen again, as opposed to like our whole nervous system. And this is part of the article I sent you, and we may do some videos in the future about this article. As the important thing to understand is that our nervous system is living in that battle right now. It's not scared it's going to happen. It's living in that battle right now for a lot of us, and I think my dreams also reflect that experience. And when I'm in a more reactive state, I'm in that experience. I'm not like thinking, oh, I'm going to lose again. I'm already in the loss in some way that I don't know how to deal with.
Totally.
What I love about dreams is they give us space to play around with it. And I also want to go back to the thing with Joseph and Sophia. Like, the fact that they can say what they think and believe that clearly, one, I want to give credit to you as a parent, because for both of them, they have their own relationship to that, right? Like Sophia's like, yeah, of course there's a battle. And, they're conscious of that, which I think is rare. I think most people, you ask that question, they would have to think about it more, where she's like, yeah, are you joking? Like, because she's already sort of conscious of that. I mean, she can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but the way that she responds makes it clear to me that she's conscious. It's also like clear to me that Joseph has his own experience of it. And I think this is really important, and may also relate to your parenting that I want to give you credit to, is like that thing of being able to set a boundary of like, yeah, and don't put your past life thing on me. I could have never done that with my parents. So he's like wielding a sword or at least the way that I hear it, and I don't want to impose my experience on him, but for me, that would be like wielding a sword.
Yes.
But you guys have enough of a relationship that he's doing something that for me would be a battle.
Right.
But for him, it's not a battle. He doesn't think of it as a battle. There's no conflict, right? Because he's not worried that you're going to whack him or like insult him back. He like knows that you're going to respect him. So you take two people doing the exact same thing. My own experience, like I didn't stand up to my parents as kids. The one time I did was around going to my sister's wedding, and my mom threatened to commit suicide. So like, for me to say what I want to my parents, that's a battle. That's a struggle. But you take somebody completely different who has you and Beth as parents, and he's doing the same exact thing. Is that a battle? Like, clearly it's not for him, right? Like,
right.
Because
you are so well into a Laura quote, very short quote. I think a lot of people don't realize picking up a sword and swinging back is an option. And just you're using the sword metaphor with, yeah, I agree. And I kind of agree with Laura. Like people, if you don't know you have a sword, if you don't know it's not a battle. It's just everyday life. Like it's just what is. They don't see it. They're not living in that battle weary experience that you talk about that shows up in these apocalyptic dreams. Energetically, it's not a big deal to wield the sword. And hence it feels less like a battle. It's
Credit to those people and to their parents.
yeah, I had zero space. It's very kind of you. I think I was that great of a parent, but it's very kind of you to say, because my experience growing up is the same. I had no very authoritarian father, a meek mother who didn't know how to speak up against this loud voice. Like my sister and I, we chose silence, and whenever one did speak, there was repercussions. So you just lose that ability to wield a sword, um, and speak back and speak your mind. I lost that. I had to gain that later in life, and through dreams and through therapy and self-reflective practices, et cetera, et cetera. Um, it took a long time, and 3 different dreams where I'm gifted a sword, one on like a pillow, a platter, like
That's
it's like a royal gift.
not a subtle dream.
Like 3 of them. Like I did. Do you know? Will you just take it, please? Because I
No,
didn't
no,
know
no.
I could fight back. I didn't know, despite being a hockey player, but I'd likely go into the boards and dig more than hit. But it's, back in the hitting days, they've taken hitting out of a lot of hockey. But it was, despite being in the world where I experienced conflict and experience, um, I energetically still felt, hence the relying to the Vanderkolk quote, that I felt a little bit of truth that I'm going to be likely on the losing side. So you just don't pick up the sword. You learn to not pick up the sword. And it shows in dreams. It reflects in dreams.
For sure. For sure.
Do you want I'm a bit conflicted to jump backwards to the last podcast. We're on such a
I think it would be good to take a minute to follow up for folks who
yeah,
have listened to podcast number 9. We spent
yeah.
quite a bit of time with this person's dream, and they gave us some feedback. So I think I appreciated hearing the feedback.
Sure, let's take just a short break to hear the feedback. So fun listening to my dream being talked about. Definitely appreciated the insights. I hadn't made much of it being 2 male figures in the dream, but it does feel significant. Mostly was interesting to hear Bill's perspective on how that isn't common. Made me feel grateful for the healthy male mentors and friends I've had in my life, which I probably tend to underappreciate. In the dream, the person watching the moon set wasn't actually anyone I know. It felt more archetypal than that in a sense. Like even in the dream, he felt symbolic or otherworldly in some way. Sort of like he was just showing how to relax and enjoying a beautiful evening and playfully encouraging me to do the same by spraying ice at me, which I definitely need reminding of.
I love the reminder thing.
Yeah.
We all need an occasional reminder.
Yeah. But yeah, I definitely do. That life's not a battle is one of the reminders I need.
Hence the
Yes.
podcast.
Hence the podcast. Yes. And can I share another quote? Going back
Sure.
to the
Sure.
battle one, this is one of my favorite. Like when I was searching before I found dreams, I went through as many of the great books from Bible to Quran to, excuse my pronunciation, Bhagavad Gita or Gita, which really stuck with me as Hindu scripture. And like this is apparently one of the, I'm not a Hindu scholar by any stretch of the imagination, but it's apparently one of the key books in their scriptures. And reading through it, um, the a little summary I got. Numerous classical and modern thinkers have written commentaries on the Gita with differing views on its essence and the relation between the individual self and the supreme self or God. So Krishna and Arjuna, and Krishna, like the chariot driver going into battle, is a God type archetype character having this conversation. And they go into battle, and he realizes the battlefield's got a bunch of relatives, like literal genetic relatives on it. And there's this dialogue: do I need to do battle? And that's kind of the essence of the conversation that occurs as I interpret it. And the Gita's setting in the battlefield has been interpreted by many scholars as an allegory for the struggles and vagaries of human life. And I would agree. To me, it's that this is a key book of Hindu scripture as I read it. And I'm just, dude from North America with no background reading this, trying to go through the great books and get insights. It's like, wow, at the core of this is a battle. Like on a spiritual level in this particular tradition, it's right there. But it's not talked about. It's interesting. Like I just did a dive into internet this and that. It's amazing how it's not consistent. Like you'll get these quotes and different quotes, but there's not a consistent consensus. And some people certainly almost, if I dare say, Buddhist sort of like, well, you can't harm, you don't like, one doesn't engage in conflict. And I don't quite know where that tradition comes from, but to me it's a bit baffling, because maybe in the ideal world where everybody gets along, there will be no conflict, but I just don't see that in my world, which is, could be in my blind spot. It could be just me. Hence wanting to do the podcast and explore dreams a bit.
Yeah. God, it opens up 1,000 questions for me about the Christian tradition around swords and laying down swords, and sort of a whole nother podcast there about like that tradition, what I grew up with, and sort of like the different interpretations.
Yeah.
People will use the same scripture to argue very different.
Right.
But I don't want to go too far off into that.
But it's relevant. Isn't there a Christ quote? I do not bring you peace, but I bring you the sword. Like there's so many conflicting. Like, what does that mean? It's
I'm gonna have to spend some time with all of that afterwards. Maybe
yeah,
we can talk about that in another. That would be intense, but
yeah, because you have a very
Catholic, yeah,
Catholic background.
yeah.
Yeah,
Grew up with a plaque over my bed that said "God is love." Not a lot of sword energy there. At least not the way I understood it, at least, or it didn't have that kind of energy to it. It had much more the laying down with the lamb kind of energy, but that would be an interesting thing to explore for me some more. I mean, I think the other thing is just to like kind of acknowledge again that like there's not necessarily an answer, right? Like there's these different traditions and these different conversations. And I think part of what's exciting about working with dreams is like we get to be in that conversation and feel into what's true in our own experience. So I also think it's possible for Buddhists to experience it one way and for someone else to experience it a very different way, or to experience it one way in your life and experience. I was talking with you earlier about a client I have that like, I don't think they need more picking up the sword energy. Like that's not been what they wanted. Like some people have a lot of that energy, and so it's very much, I think, a relational conversation of like, well, it goes back to the thing we were saying earlier, like what wants to be born in me? Does a more empowered sort of boundary setting of like, being able to set boundaries and kind of fight my way through experiences, and how much do I need to like surrender and accept?
yes,
And I think it can be very different at different parts of our lives. Like even within each person, you'll see people's dreams evolve, or people will have this, we were talking about birthing dreams. Like a lot of times people have a birthing dream, and then right after they have the birthing dream, they'll have a very violent dream, and they'll be like, what happened to my baby? Like,
yes. That's
they'll
actually
feel,
pretty common. It's
yeah,
like
yeah,
another level of, okay, and that you dealt with that. How about this now? Or you move
yeah,
past that. There's the new you can deal with this.
right,
It's amazingly common what you said there.
right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a great conversation. I think it's a great conversation to be in. I'm going to read my quote just because I
Yeah.
brought a
Yeah. Yeah.
quote for once. This is an interview that Krista Tippett did with Adrienne Marie Brown, and I'll put these names I'll try to remember to put these in the description if you're listening later. And I guess it's a quote from Terry Marshall, but this is Adrienne Marie Brown speaking. He was the first person to say this to me, that we're actually in an imagination battle. that we're in a battle of the imagination, which just blew my mind. And I think about it often that we live in this abundant world and we've been told it's scarce, and we're given all these stories of scarcity. So much of the work from me of radical imagination is like, what does it look like to imagine beyond the constructs we've been given? What does it look like to imagine a future where we all get to be there, not causing harm to each other and experiencing that abundance? So that I thought that was an interesting quote because it like embodies both the battle part of it, right? Like in this case, she's talking about a battle for the imagination, but also like how to not get it caught in this battle that turns into a kind of abusiveness, which often happens. How do we not cause harm? How do we be with, and I think a lot of this also comes down in the background of all of this. I keep thinking about our conversations we've had about anger and having a relationship with anger that isn't always about unloading our anger on people around us. Like, how do we hold anger in a way that might feel like wielding the sword, but not wielding the sword in a way that we normally think of wielding the sword? Like, it's not necessarily about cutting someone else's head off. It's more about like making space for that birth that I was talking about earlier. At least that's how I think about it, like how to bring consciousness into this world in the face of all these energies that are like, no, you can't go there. Or no, in this case, like, no, there's not enough abundance to be able to do that. You have to like be small. You have to be, you can't be big and abundant. You have to be small and scarce. And I think it's a bit of a battle to like, I love that idea of the battle of imagination. And I feel like dreams, because I think it fits in with dreams and creativity, right? Like it gives us space to play around with imagination, which I think is a very powerful thing to do.
Yes. That dreams are a reflection of what's happening inside. And even as you're speaking, just that there's an inner journey and an outer journey. And God knows infinite ways of wording this. But if somebody doesn't appreciate what's happening within us, or that there is an inner journey, and if you don't resolve that conflict, you're going to project that conflict outwards. And for sure, for me, with authoritarian father, I was mistrustful of male figures in the world or authority figures, which is a pretty common thing to do. It's not just me, for sure. But if I don't reconcile the conflict within me, I will see conflict everywhere out there, which is part of the reason to acknowledge this for those who have those dreams, because and it's kind of a different variation on that Van der Kolk quote. Like you just to acknowledge, can we see that you're going to be playing this out energetically if you don't recognize it within you? And can I tell you a brief one of my dreams? I look back.
Yeah. I'm like, we're a half hour in and we still haven't done a dream. I was just laughing. I'm like, we could go on about this for a long time. We should probably bring in a dream.
Yes. So short dream from a couple years ago. There's something on the ground that I think are tubes of something like ammunition, but it doesn't clearly look like shells, like bullet shells. I pick up some, and because I think I'll need some, a man comes along and picks up a lot of it and tries to convince me I need a lot more. I said, no, I don't think so. And I just take what I can carry. And that's the end of the dream. But it definitely felt like ammunition. And albeit it's not a war dream, I can
Close enough if you're dealing
right.
with the ammunition on the ground.
In retrospect, I can see, I know that like in that part of me that thinks I need even more ammunition, either literally, like if you work in the literal world, oh, Jacob Ecker, you stockpiling ammunition. It's like, well, no, but I've got enough. For living in the North, and for, I used to hunt. I don't hunt regularly anymore at all, but I didn't, but there's a group of people that will stockpile literal ammunition in the outer world. And but if you energetically on my inner world, I could see I need to stockpile more. Like there needs to be a way that I can face this conflict. Like it becomes a conversation about conflict. And I know that part of me that can go down this aberrant pathway, at worst being like a doomsday prepper and stockpiling ammo at worst. And I've met a number of those people, and interesting, I met one of them in the emergency room, and the police had brought them in because they were making, modifying firearms. And I asked one of the, I just, knowing inner work, I just said, once I got a little bit of rapport, I said, who was it that hurt you? And it's amazing how often, boom, my mother, my father, my uncle, like people will just, they kind of know exactly what I'm asking. It's like somehow they lost trust in the world. But yeah.
That's beautiful, Jake. I love hearing that. I mean, goes back to like what your friend was saying about the male companionship in this case, or I think it's true for female companionship or companionship of any kind too. But to have someone who'll listen and ask that question, as opposed to just judge somebody for doing something that might seem odd to those of us who don't modify our guns or don't have guns, might seem extreme. But again, like to that person, to make space for like why they're doing that is an amazing thing, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, it's better than, we medicate people, we put them in padded rooms, and we throw them in the drunk tank or the police cells and put them in the justice system. And like, goodness knows, I don't know the answer, Bill, but I know some sort of, hence doing this podcast, some sort of looking within to see where that energy comes from is
Yeah,
valuable.
and I think can I say something about your
Yeah,
dream?
yeah, please.
I mean, it's more of a general thing. I mean, it's a fascinating dream, right? Because it like shows the process, right? Of like, it's not like this fixed thing. It's like there's these different choices in the dream. Like, I need ammo. How much ammo do I need? This person's saying I need more. I'm saying, no, I think I have enough. I think it's kind of an amazing thing if you think about it, particularly in relationship to like what I was saying about anger. And you would have to tell me what this means for you personally, or boundary setting or whatever, because I think for all of us, when we, at least in my experience, and if it's different for you, let me know. But when we're first learning how to be with our anger and boundary settings, or learning how to be in the battle, that first wave of energy that comes up feels really big. It feels like a bomb, like it's a lot of ammo, or it feels like, oh, I'm going to kill somebody, or I'm going to hurt somebody. And so it's a fascinating dream in that, like, you're like, no, I only need exactly this much. I mean, think about the work that you've done to get to a place where, like, right or wrong, of like, I think I need this much. I don't need less. I don't need more. I need this much, which I think most people have no idea. Like, most people either avoid conflict or they like think they have to pull out a bazooka.
Right.
Or that was a pattern for me, is like I would avoid conflict to the point where I kind of blew up. Like I couldn't hold it anymore, and then I would blow. And that would start the cycle all over again, because I would blow up in a way that was obviously not really okay, not even really okay for me for that matter. And then feed the voices of shame. It's like, oh, I have to put all the ammunition away because I just like unloaded 100 weapons on somebody. So now I need to put it all away. But then unconsciously it all builds up again, and the cycle doesn't end, as opposed to like you're there in that whole process and like, no, I think this is exactly the right amount for me. I think that's very, very cool.
Yeah, that was after a lot of years of therapy.
Yeah.
I got to
Yeah.
that place.
Yeah.
Because that wouldn't have been me way back when I was hurt, like far more hurt and not knowing.
So what would it have been for you, if that's okay to ask?
What would have been? Sorry.
Well, you said that wouldn't have been you beforehand. Like that was the you that knew how much ammo to have. That
Yeah.
was you after all the years of work. So let's, say you were presented your psyche was presented that dream in some way 10 years before. What do you think your relationship to the ammo would have been?
it's shades of the other person in the dream, which it's not
You would
always
have needed
true.
as much as you could.
Right. Right. And so it's not always true that the characters in the dreams are parts of you, but there's often an energetic crossover and having people feel into that part. So this dream, it's a much easier. There's one other character, that other character, that abundance versus like when you don't know you live in abundance in a way, which when you think there's just going to be conflict upon conflict upon conflict, there's no amount of ammo you can possibly need. So I haven't had a lot of ammo gathering dreams. It's mostly been death and dismemberment and battlefields and um yeah. And before this, we'd both like how much do you need? We both shared stories. Well, you shared a story, but I love there's one really poignant story of one of my dream work clients who they 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 were pretty harsh on a lot of other people, but they'd been very hurt. And in one of their dreams, they were gifted a scabbard for a sword, and they were very confused by
It's
this.
just the scabbard.
Just the scabbard, like
It's not that confusing, right?
right. I'm like, I thought it was like, oh my god, this is so easily symbolic. They were very confused by this. So, do I use my sword? Like they didn't even realize they had a sword, but energetically, oh boy, could I see it playing out in the outer world. They would cut people down. Uh,
That's so sweet though, because they're not taking the sword away.
right.
They're like
Right.
giving them a scabbard for their sword, a container for their anger, like a space for their anger where like you're talking about where you get to have a choice about whether you pull it out or not. It's not
Right.
like just take it away. That's a very interesting dream.
He was a very sweet person too, that was unaware how hard they were on other parts of society or other, like they were just unaware.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like that. I can relate to that. I get a lot of kudos for being a good person.
So do you have
But
dreams to share, Bill, or do you want to?
well, I guess the one I have a bunch of dreams. I guess the one I feel most kind of there's an older dream where I'm diffusing a bomb. And part of what's fascinating about the dream is like, I really know how to diffuse this bomb. Like, I have the tools, I know what I'm doing, I know what I need to do next. I've done a bunch of, I mean, it's a fascinating dream in that way because I'm like, I'm going through this whole process, which obviously I know nothing about bombs. I know nothing about guns or bombs or. And this guy comes up to me in the middle of the dream out of nowhere. I'm in this kind of public setting, diffusing this bomb, and it's kind of classic movie setting, there's the timer, there's the wires, it's kind of straight out of a movie scene. And this guy comes up to me and goes, "Hey, Bill, you want to go get a beer?" And I think I do. I've had this dream, so I couldn't find the actual dream, but I think in the dream, I think he like shakes my reality so deeply that I'm like, okay. And I just walk away from the bomb. It's like it was a very interesting dream for me. I think it kind of relates to the dream I talked about last time, like that anxiety, like trying to save the boys that I thought were drowning. It's that same kind of like, I think he was giving me a way out of that anxiety, a way out of like, it's just like, no, you don't need to defuse the bomb. You don't need to like walk around on tiptoes. You don't have to walk around feeling like the rug's going to get pulled out from underneath you. And there can be an acknowledgement that like, you know, maybe there's a reason I spent a lot of my life trying to defuse bombs, like that's okay too. And like
Can you give me an example?
of me defusing bombs,
Yeah, or attempting to,
I,
or
I I mean, even that thing with my mom, like I think that's a good example of like where a bomb went off, for example, and I think it affected me deeply. I mean, I think her sort of, I had this relationship with my mom where just like I think I was scared of her. You know, I don't know what I want to call it, but I think I tiptoed around a lot. Let's put it that way, and I think she describes me as this she's passed now, God bless her. She described me as this very good boy. And like literally she will say like, "Oh, you were a wonderful baby." Like, I think I learned very early on to be a good boy, to kind of like tiptoe around and make the world happy. And, Like I think I became a very good plumber. I think it's, I think it's part of why I'm a good therapist. I don't want to like downplay, this. I learned to be conscious in a certain way. I also grew up in a somewhat rough, dangerous neighborhood, so I learned to be on alert for violent people just out in the world, and had a couple of experience. I mean, that wasn't a projection; it was a literal place where there was a risk, and I got jumped a couple of times, and with weapons, and so I think you talked about conflict averse earlier. Like I got very good at being conflict averse. I got very good at diffusing bombs. I got very good. I would have been a very good professional mediator. I think I have that training psychologically. You know, Maybe it's part of my nature also. It's hard to know. But I'm not one to like naturally pick up a sword. Like I'm one of those people who would probably be good for me to, you know, learn to pick up a sword. I've had dreams. I had another dream where you okay if I just bring in
Eh,
another dream?
sure. I just wanted to point out before you do that, like it's not a people. Oftentimes, the head wants to categorize things as good or bad. Is this a good dream, bad dream? That it's okay to diffuse bombs, but it's also good to go for a beer. It's also not bad that you're diffusing bombs, right? It's just you happen to be
It
good at that.
reminds me of a funny story. Speaking of male support, where I went to this chiropractor. I think it was probably around 30, and I went to this chiropractor and I filled out one of those forms, and I was like trying to be a vegetarian and not to drink and do all these things that were like, quote, good for my health, which of course they were, like nothing wrong with all of them. But I got to the end of the thing with this chiropractor, and he like looked at me and he said, it wouldn't hurt for you to go have a beer occasionally. And I remember I got it in that moment of like, oh my God, I'm like so uptight about all this stuff. And he's just similar to the dream. He's just saying like, maybe it's also okay to like have a beer occasionally, Bill.
Yes.
Uh,
Your dream?
yeah, the other dream, it's another also older dream where I'm in this line. It's like something straight out of Lord of the Rings kind of a scene where I'm in a line of archers, almost like, one of these elf scenes with all the archers in the Lord of the Rings movies. And there's a horde of orcs charging toward us. And I'm apparently in charge because I'm there saying repeatedly, hold. Like I'm just like, hold, like don't shoot yet. Hold. It's kind of like hold until you see the whites of their eyes, sort of an idea, until they're close enough to inflict maximum damage. And then I say let loose and we all fire our arrows. And that's all I remember from the dream. The feeling is like both terrifying. It's kind of also thrilling, I have to say. Like it's not an experience that I'm used to feel that kind of power or to have the sword, if you will, and resolve all at the same time. So I think for me, that was like a very radical dream to like feel okay about having a bow and arrow in that way and inflicting damage and inflicting maximum damage was sort of like kind of outside of my pacifist philosophy or my pacifist leanings anyway. I was never really a pacifist, but I definitely always had pacifist anti-war leanings. It's also like a big thing to not be alone. Like we talked about that last time, to be in this line of archers and be like, okay, this is terrifying, but I have like, we're up against this huge horde, but we also have this huge line of archers and we're going to do some damage. There's a feeling like we're going to do some damage here, like, and we're going to do maximum damage. So it's hard for me to even say that now. It's like that kind of language is still like a stretch for me.
Yeah, that's not the Bill I know energetically.
Sue would disagree if you see me in a competitive game, but yeah, it does come out when I'm playing games or competitive games. I can get that part of me can really come out. I even have this funny thing. I'm learning Italian and they put you in this league on Duolingo. And, I'm like, I'm always in this fight to be in the top three or to be in first place. And I'm like, damn, they caught up with me and I'll do extra. It works for me because I'm doing extra Italian because I'm like, I want to be, they pass me. I have to catch up with them. I have this competitive edge. Makes me think of my dad. It was
Yeah.
also kind of sweet personality, but you get him out on the tennis court and he was like a murderer. He was like no mercy. No matter how little you were, from however young you were, it was like no mercy.
Some competition is good. Even my son was I'm not doing enough Duolingo French, and my son
I
challenged
see
me.
you on there. I see you on
Yeah,
there.
you and Joseph are both kicking my ass on Duolingo. Yes, I'll get there. Dream language. Any other dreams? I've got more dreams, more quotes. Any other thoughts, or should we do a few more dreams or quotes?
I have one from a client.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one. I'm on an island which has been wreaked by bombing slash war. I'm diffusing bombs with another person, another guy. We venture into a large trailer type structure that's like balanced on the edge of a mountain almost. And as we work on the bomb, the trailer starts to feel like it's going to fall down the mountain. As it begins to fall, I'm not worried because somehow I'm floating in the middle of the trailer. And I know that when it hits, I'm going to be floated. So I thought that was there's an interesting dream, both the whole background and just like how many people have like these very violent sort of scenarios, again diffusing a bomb, learning to diffuse a bomb, but not really being on the planet literally. Like I'm not even on the ground in the dream. As the dreamer, I don't have to worry about impact because I'm kind of floating. There's one possibility anyway of like I'm just there floating in space. So I don't have to worry about obviously there's a chance there's going to be an explosion when this trailer hits the ground. But somehow I've like maybe dissociated from all of it, which I also think can be a very common experience.
For sure. And even, I mean, to everything, there's a season. There's a good time to have a trailer. Trailers are fun, but most times, I would suggest in dreams, it's not about a fun travel trailer. Like people are pulling a trailer of luggage or having a whole bunch of luggage that they're unaware that they're pulling.
I
They're
think in this case, it wasn't a travel trailer, just to be clear. I think it was like a utility trailer, like a commercial kind of like utility trailer
which can
sort of
store even
thing.
more. Which can,
You can't even live in it, right? Like you can only carry stuff.
yes. So these things that we're often unaware that we're dragging behind us or carrying behind us tends to be the metaphor. And you wonder, it's one of the questions, unless it's part of their job. But yeah, that it can store a lot of stuff.
A lot of past experiences, a lot of explosions, a lot of places where I had to defuse a bomb. I do want to, before I forget, I keep forgetting this of just like, I also just want to acknowledge people who are listening. Like I have several clients in Israel who are sometimes in the middle of war scenes. And and also for any veterans listening, like we're talking about this all metaphorically. In this case, this person wasn't a veteran, but also just a reminder for all of us that like, I've never experienced literal war. I've never experienced literal bombs. I've experienced literal violence, street violence for sure. But I've never experienced war. And I do want to kind of, for anyone who's listening, who's in a war zone, to just kind of acknowledge that, like, it's a different, if you're having this dream and you're in the middle of a war zone, then we're not necessarily talking about baggage from the past. That could be a part of it. But I did want to throw that out there, like, just kind of for anyone with military experience or lives in a war zone, given that there are multiple war zones in the world right now. Just wanted to
Yes.
throw out that piece also so that we don't just like completely screw over that reality that people live in.
Yes.
And
Good disclaimer. And I'm in a place of relative peace in Canada right now, and it's I also have not actually been in a military um, occupation in my world, which kind of made me very confused when I was having all these dreams. Because if I was, I would be like, oh, well, this could be related to me processing what's happening in my outer world. And yeah, I agree. We're talking about metaphors here more than otherwise, but 100 things can be true, including outer world experiences and actual processing of.
It's always good to start with the outer world just in case there's a literal experience that matches the experience of the dream.
Yeah, and you never know. You have to ask people, right?
Yeah, I had a funny. This conversation always reminds me of a client I worked with in LA who was a professional woman, Jewish background, and she had a dream where she had like a machine gun in the dream, and I'm like, I felt kind of silly asking like if she had experience with guns because she's a professional woman, she's living in LA, and I'm like, all my assumption was that she had never used a gun, and because she had kind of grown up part of her life in Israel, she had been in the military and knew how to use the machine gun inside out. And I was like, okay, it's a whole different meaning of the dream. Like, let's back up for a moment and like, let go of some of your preconceptions here, Bill. And take a breath and realize like, oh, sometimes a machine gun's a machine gun in a dream, not a metaphor.
Yes.
Although it can be both also, like you can start, but like if someone's had an experience like that, if someone's been, experienced a bombing or has military experience, I do think it's important to start on that level before we do something that's metaphorical that jumps over someone's actual experience.
Right. But dreams do tend to take in real world experiences and use them as metaphors. If you're a golfer, there'll often be golf. If you watch soap operas, there'll be soap opera references. If there's like it's amazing. The same message can be the dreams tend to pull from parts of your life that you have experience of, um, and use them as metaphor to teach. Quote, I love music. And one of the very I was doing a breath work retreat in New Orleans. Kezia was there. Kezia was whether she was running it or not, but love it. And one of the songs playing just really struck me. Lucinda Williams' song called "Compassion," and it says like, "Have compassion for everyone you meet." And the quote after that is, "You do not know what wars are going on down there where the spirit meets the bone." And she just repeats that. "You do not know what wars are going on down there where the spirit meets the bone." And just the way she sings it, it just struck me as true. And being at a breathwork sort of healing retreat, being in New Orleans, and the message, have compassion, because goodness knows the people you meet out there, um, there's often a battle going on in my experience. And hence wanting to do this podcast. Is it just me, or is it just because not all of my clients have battles? But it's amazing. I'm like waiting for the battle scene. And I know one person with a very difficult childhood. They were driving their car. They were going through um, a drive-through sort of a setting, and there was this massive. It's like a massive, almost a silo, like a grain silo, tin can shaped, and the top rips off, and there's like blood and guts and people screaming, and it's like stories high. It's like a whole bunch of canned trauma that opened up, and my questions like, oh, was as compassionate as I could, is like one of the ways you cope with knowing that this thing is there, by going through this drive-through. They openly admitted, just to openly open the lightheartedly open the conversation about what is this for you. That was one of the tangents of uh, like when something's so big, and this person had truly been through hell in their past. So there's a whole bunch that, and it's not for me to open it. Like they can, but it was opening, like in the dream, and it was opening in the session and in various dreams, and they had a lot of support. And how do I how do I not be another aggressor in that session? How do I not add to the trauma? How do I not make things worse for them? But it's another, like, you can have dream after dream after dream, but there's a massive silo of trauma there that's been canned up. And it's not for me to make them open it. But the dream kind of showed, woof, there's a lot there. And they can
Yeah.
open at their leisure or will, or never open it at all, but it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it actually, I would offer this as kind of a suggestion for people who are struggling to learn how to work with their own dreams, to just kind of consider the possibility that there's a battle, or that there's trauma, or that there's something there in the background. Whether it's literally in the dream or not, it changes how you look at a dream, or how you look at someone's relationship to a dream. Like, there can be very simple things in a dream. I'm trying to think of something of my own. I can't think of something specific, but like something like not asking for help, like even before, well, this is a non-dream example, but we're allowed to not always just talk about a dream, right? Like even just asking for you for help with the kind of process of like getting the podcast out, like I'm not inclined to ask for help. You know what I mean? Like I'm not, we've been doing this how long now? And it's like, I'm finally like asking for a little bit of help.
Yes.
Not to make a big deal out of that, but in a way, like I've learned that like actually it is a big deal. In that, like, if you're looking at a dream and you see somebody and you're like, because often in dreams there'll be other characters in the dream. One of the classic ones, I had a client, for some reason this dream always really sticks out in my head, where he's in college. He's an older guy now, but actually he's passed now, but he's an older guy when I worked the dream with him. But in the dream, he's in college and he's younger, and he walks this inordinate distance across this campus that he's on. And, it's like a 20-30 minute walk. Like it's obviously a very big campus. And he gets there and he needs a cup of coffee. And he's back in the, like, when he went to college, which is like the 30s or 40s. Like we're talking an older guy, like a long time ago in college. And he just wants a cup of coffee. And he gets there and he like doesn't have the nickel for the cup of coffee. And he starts walking all the way back across campus. Now, is that a trauma dream? Obviously, it's not a trauma dream, right? Or is he so like been taught that it's not okay for him to ask for even a nickel, that it doesn't occur to him to turn to a fellow student and say, "Hey, I forgot my wallet. Could you give me a nickel?"
Yes.
Like, and when you start to bring, whether you think of it as trauma in the background, or a battle, or training experiences, or diminishment, or like Adrienne Marie Brown's talking about this, lack of imagination, or inculcation of the idea of scarcity. Dreams, the way you work with a dream, or the way you sit with a dream, it suddenly changes the whole meaning of the dream. Because in a way, then you realize it's like, oh, that would be a battle for them. And this is how I worked with him in the dream. I'm like, well, what would it be like for you to like just stop and ask somebody for, I mean, how much was a cup of coffee back then? And he was like, well, it was about a nickel. I'm like, so how hard would it be for you to ask? And it was hard, I'm kind of joking about it, but like, he was like, what, and I relate to that. Like the reason I brought up my own example is because I think this is like, we were talking last time about the isolation and dreams. Like this is a classic example. I'm like, well, how many people are there? Because like, well, it's a cafeteria. There are like hundreds of people there. And I'm like, okay, and so whether they can ask for the nickel or not is not the point. It's not like the Van der Kolk quote, it's not about whether they overcome that fear or not. It might be that like the whole session or the whole dream practice becomes about like noticing the places where they learn not to ask for a nickel.
Right.
And it for me, when I realized this about dreams, everything about dreams started to make sense. All these dreams that seem weird, it's like, well, what is that about? It's about nothing. I forgot my wallet and now I'm walking back. It doesn't mean anything. But when you add this one piece of like, well, why not ask for the nickel? Suddenly, like you realize there's all this like experience in the background that like allows you to go into your inner world and also learn to be in the world in this whole other way. Because how do you be a parent? How do you be a partner? How do you be a friend? If you can't communicate your own needs, how well can you give other people? How well can you be in relationship? How well can you do your job? How well can you function, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, your original question of like, does everyone have a battle? And I would say on some level, it's safer to assume yes than not. Let's put it that way.
The cards are on the table, Bill. Yes. And in relating to what you're saying, and if I've got one little longer dream, but it proves the point in a way. One of the ways out, increasingly, over and over and over again, which a bit fits the Christian narrative as I see it, is to ask for help. And if you don't know, if you think you're alone and you don't know how to ask for help, or you're scared to ask for help, or your experience in life is you don't know how to ask for help, life's going to be harder. It's things are going to be felt more as a battle. It tends to be true. Can I read you a dream?
Sure.
This one is from, let me see. Does it start here? Right here. I'm in a scene that feels like a science fiction environment. It feels a bit like a video game, but also real. I'm inside a massive container where I think there's water, that the water might be radioactive. There's like water monsters, dinosaurs that I'm dodging. It's like literally something from these old dinosaur video things that you see. I have a sword. I know that if I drink the water, I'll get very big and I can more easily slay monsters. It seems scary and a bit indecisive. And then the dream kind of switches a bit. I'm in a similar sort of exact same place with water, and there's other people near that look aggressive. There's monsters there too. I ask one of the people in the water with me for a drink of water, and he seems friendly now. And he passes me a hose, and I drink from the hose. And then I ask him how to defeat the monsters. He tells me. I know I can drink the water and become huge. I drink the water, I become huge, and I head out and I slay monsters. But the moment I ask for help, the whole energy that I could feel in the dream, I actually feel this in the dream, everything feels calmer as soon as I ask for help. And it's like the video game pauses or resets because I've just changed the narrative in my favor. And now I can slay the monsters.
Wow.
It's a pretty cool dream.
That's very cool. That's very, very cool.
And I actually noticed
even the drinking the water thing too is kind of cool.
It is pretty cool.
Then he gives them a hose.
We're all in water. I ask for water. It gives me like there's just so much water.
There's abundance. There's abundance.
Can you be aware of the water, Jacob? Can you actually take a drink? Yeah. So one of the ways out of the battle for me, or to switch the odds in my favor, has been to ask. Funny that. And I've had trouble asking for help in the outer world because my childhood experience is if you ask for help, it's not going to be given, or you'll be ridiculed or downplayed or made to feel weak, which is an old cliche of the old way of being. Even like a man typically wouldn't stop at a gas station for directions in the age before phones, et cetera, because it's seen as a weakness to ask for help. Are you with me, Bill?
I am with you. I'm realizing, like last couple of videos, we've gotten to the end and you've been like, I think I'm a little bit like at the end of my sort of capacity. I think it's my turn to be like, I'm like, wow, this has been an intense conversation for me.
Yeah, this is a lot. This is a lot.
It's a lot. I'm curious how it is for people listening, but I know for me as doing it, it's like, it's a lot to process. It's a lot to kind of like talk about this many dreams. It's a lot to talk about my own dreams, to be with you with your dreams. Super intense.
It is, and I feel I want a part 2 on this too. I just had a lot to get out.
Apparently, I think for both of us, there's a lot here. Could even be a part 3 possibly at the rate we're going.
Yes.
I mean,
Apparently,
we're an hour and 4 minutes in, like.
Toots is okay with it. Apparently, though.
Meanwhile, Toots is like, no battle here. I don't need any sword.
No, exactly. Okay, let's wind down then, Bill. This has been good. Thank you.
It's been great. Thank you. Appreciate you. Thanks to everybody listening. Just a reminder, it does help us out if you've gotten this far to subscribe, to drop a comment if you want to, send us an email about a dream, and we'll bring it into the conversation. Hope this has been a good conversation for you also. Thanks, everybody.